So far so good.
Good.
Everything good?
Do you understand that?
아니, there's my mom. There's human being. 라고.
And that is Lita's current introduction to everyone on the podcast. Daniela, thanks for joining us today. I have this terrible habit of when I introduce a guest, we get clocked as AI. Like the computer hears how I introduce guests and goes, it must be computer generated. Do you mind introducing yourself so the entire episode doesn't get labeled as AI?
Of course, absolutely. So I'm Daniela Feldhausen. I am the founder of Kids Up Reading Tutors. I was a lawyer in DC for about 25 years and then decided to do something totally different with my life. Went back to school, got a master's degree in special ed, did a bunch of specialized training in teaching kids to read. And that's what I do now, together with a team of somewhere between 15 and 20 tutors. We work with kids. Actually, we're at, I think, 65 kids right now, all across the United States, and a few outside the United States.
For those of our audience members who, for some reason, have not heard Lita and I discuss dyslexia in depth before, can you kind of give them an overview of what dyslexia is? Because I know the number one thing I always get told is, well, it's just the words floating on the page, and it's so much more than that.
Yeah, I would not describe it at all as words floating around on the page. If you go to the website of the International Dyslexia Association, they've got a definition right there, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but it's something along the lines of unexpected trouble learning to read, comma, usually associated with an issue with phonological processing. And if you'd like, we can go into what exactly phonological processing is and what that means. You're not
Funny
nodding and
feeling. A
nodding.
lot of people, I mean, I have been in this world forever. So, like, I'm like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what that means. But a lot of our list audience are not necessarily in the neurodivergence world. And something like phonological, they're going to be like, oh, you mean like learn phonics from way back in the 70s and 80s?
So it's interesting because phonics and this phonological thing that we're about to talk about, they both start with phon. So they both start with that PHON, and that means sound. So it all has to do with sounds. But actually, phonics and phonological skills are very different. So phonics is the relationship between the letters and the sounds. So if you see a T in a word, you're probably going to pronounce it t. Some of the patterns, and actually there are even exceptions to that one, but some of the patterns are more complicated. For example, if you see an EA in a word, it's usually going to be E, like eat. Sometimes it'll be E, like thread. And sometimes it'll be A, like break. So that's phonics. That's the relationship between the sounds and the letters. Phonological skills is actually something different. It's actually more about how your brain is wired. It's about understanding how our reading and writing system works, meaning, do you really, really, truly, deeply realize that words are made up of individual sounds? And if you string those sounds together in different combinations, you get different words. To somebody who's a good reader, a fluent reader and a good speller, like, yes, of course, sounds are words and words are sounds. That makes total sense. But to somebody who's dyslexic, that is not at all obvious. Their brains are literally not wired to grasp that concept initially. They can absolutely be taught this, but initially they're not going to realize that that's what's going on here. And that's why you've got a whole lot of kids trying desperately to memorize words. They're trying to memorize this word and this word and this word and this word, looking around at the other kids in the classroom thinking, wow, they must have much better memories than I do because they're memorizing all these words. And what these kids aren't realizing is that no, the classmates, the others who are doing this, they're not memorizing the words. They're learning those phonics patterns, and then they're sounding the words out from left to right. But if you don't understand that that's how the system works, if you don't have those good phonological skills that let you take a word and break it down into smaller pieces, or take those smaller pieces and build them up into a word, if you don't realize that that's how it works, then, if your teacher is standing in front of the classroom and explaining to everyone that EA is pronounced E, but you don't realize you can put S and S in front and T a T at the end and get seat, then what your teacher is telling you isn't going to make a whole lot of sense. And it tends to kind of go in one ear and out the other, which is why a lot of the kids who come into school with poor phonological skills then also have a really hard time learning the phonics patterns. Because if you don't know how it works, then why is she telling me all these things? Why is she telling me that EA is pronounced E?
Sounds slightly familiar over there with you and speech therapists trying to explain that words have sounds. She's like, I'm going to pretend not as I hide.
Yeah.
She
I mean,
hasn't
speech language pathologists absolutely work on phonological skills as well as part of the speech language training. Absolutely.
she happens to have an autoprocessory disorder that adds to the phonological disorders. And every single teacher she's ever had is like, oh, so it's just like she doesn't understand phonics. And I'm like, hooked on phonics is a totally different thing. She just does not understand that cat has any, letters associated with it, even when you're talking.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are a lot of kids who have trouble with that. One, quick thing you can do is, find out whether, I don't know about you, Lita, or maybe another child, find out, can the kids rhyme? Like if you ask them to give you words that rhyme with bat, I don't know if you want to play along here, Lita. But what are the words that rhyme with bat? And see if the child understands what that is, see if they understand what that means.
You're like, does that sound familiar from speech therapy when they're like, let's learn how to rhyme in speech therapy? She's like,
Mhm.
I'm hiding.
She's hiding. She's hiding. Okay. So
No,
what
but
happened?
it's yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay, kiddo. Everyone who has these issues, we're trying to make it. She had a lot of teachers who were like, that's a bad thing. And then she's had a lot of complaints later on. She's like, why did I have to go to speech to learn the English language when none of you went to learn the English language the way I did?
I mean, good speech therapy will break it down and will teach you things that other people might have picked up some other way. I mean, I think that's really what it's about. But it's interesting. So we are tutors who work with kids who are having trouble with reading and spelling, dyslexia and dysgraphia. Some of our kids are diagnosed with dyslexia and some dysgraphia, and some of them aren't. But what happens is that a lot of those things are hereditary in nature. So if the student has a problem with it, there's a good chance that one of the parents, or maybe even both of the parents, have a problem with reading and spelling. And so what we do when we work with the students is we always let the parents, if they're interested, they can always stay in the room. So sometimes the parents are in the room or sometimes they're in the next room over kind of listening in. And so often the parents will come to me and said, "Oh, I didn't learn this stuff myself when I was a kid. This is super interesting. I didn't know the spelling rules, for example. I didn't know that EA could have three different possible pronunciations. I didn't know." And so we have a bunch of parents who just stay in and listen in on the sessions, and who get a lot out of it themselves.
She had one of her occupational therapists was working on her dyslexia, and I'm like, could you go over that again? And the OT was like, why? And I'm like, they did not have dysgraphia when I was a kid. I did not get this training that you're doing. And the OT was like, yeah, pull up a chair. But she's like, wait, how long ago were you diagnosed with dyslexia? I'm like, well, I was 11 when I was diagnosed, so not young. And she's like, do you know they didn't diagnose in the 90s?
Yeah. So we have a lot of parents who are in that same boat, and who want to listen in to the conversations and learn about spelling rules and learn about phonics patterns, and learn to break words into smaller pieces and build up words from smaller pieces, in the sessions right along with their kids. It's actually a lot of fun.
You hit on it in passing, but dysgraphia, that's another one that both of us have been diagnosed with that people just are like, what is dysgraphia? I have never heard of dysgraphia. What is this weird thing? And I'm like, it's one of the disses. Just go look it up because it wasn't something I was intimately aware of when I was a kid. Do you mind kind of hitting on what that is?
Sure, absolutely. Dysgraphia. So dyslexia, it's pretty clear what we're talking about. There's the universal definition: trouble learning to read. Usually, the result or usually associated with this phonological issue. Dyslexia actually has multiple facets, I'm going to say. So dyslexia means you're having trouble with writing, But there are multiple reasons why people might have trouble with writing. One of them might have to do with the fact that you're having trouble with spelling, and that's for the same reasons that you're having trouble with reading. So those are, in that sense, dyslexia and dysgraphia are considered two sides of the same coin. It's the same underlying problem with phonological skills and with phonics. That's one facet of dysgraphia. Other people might have trouble writing because they're having a hard time, for example, holding the pen or the marker or the pencil or whatever it is. And maybe they don't have the grip strength or they're holding that marker incorrectly. Um, that would also be considered dysgraphia. That's not the kind of dysgraphia that we work on. So if you've got that kind of dysgraphia, then you might want to go see an occupational therapist to learn how to hold the pencil properly and to build up the muscle strength in your hand and in your fingers in order to be able to do that without your hand hurting. Um, if all of those things are okay, but maybe you're having trouble organizing your thoughts, then that's something else. That would be another reason why you might have dysgraphia. So there are different aspects of it, and you have to really figure out when someone comes to me and says, "Oh, my child's been diagnosed with dysgraphia." The first question is, "Well, what does that mean? Like, tell me more." So that I can figure out, are we the right people to help that child, or do they need help from a different specialty, from somebody else?
And just because you have dysgraphia doesn't mean you just have one of the many different forms of dysgraphia.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, you could have one or more of the different versions of dysgraphia. Absolutely. If
'Cause
you've got dyslexia, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're also going to have the spelling version of dysgraphia. But those other things could be in addition to. And
she yeah,
I'm
she
gonna
went to OT specifically for the handwriting originally because they're like, "Well, we'll deal with the phonological stuff over here." And then her OT's like, "Just give me the entire thing, please. Just hand it all over here because I know how to work with the entirety of dysgraphia."
okay, great. Um, I'm going to touch on something else that you mentioned before, something about words or letters kind of floating around. That's not actually considered dyslexia. People used to think that that was dyslexia, that dyslexic people had letters and words, floating around, moving around on the page. Um, is actually not related to dyslexia. There are people who have both of these things. So you might, by coincidence, sorry, have a student who has dyslexia and who's also got vision problems. But the vision problems aren't the cause of what we consider dyslexia, according to the current research. So, for most people with dyslexia, by far, it has nothing to do with words floating around on a page. But if you actually have something going on visually, not saying that isn't true, that you're not having problems with your visual, systems, but that's something that is not considered dyslexia, but it's something that you would go and get treated. You go see a developmental optometrist for that. And we work with a handful of kids who do our kind of tutoring and then also, or maybe before or after, work with the developmental optometrist to work on any vision issues. So there is overlap, but actually not that much overlap. It's really just a handful of students we've worked who've had that.
She may be the one overlap, though I don't think words float for you. It's just that you can't track right. She tracks from bottom to top and right to left,
Okay. And have you been?
which is
You said you've been to a developmental optometrist.
she's been to developmental optometrist. She's been in therapies for it. They had her going to an occupational therapist who that was what they did was work on everything eye related. And they were amazing. And they'd been doing it for 20 years before, most of this was like real stuff. And she understood the dyslexia, but she also had other people in the office who could explain the dyslexia to her because it's always helpful to have people that are better equipped to explain that stuff. But a lot of times everyone wants to lump all of it. Oh, and she also has a lazy eye, which does not help when you have everything else. But you lump all that together and people are like, "Oh, is that all dyslexia?" I'm like, "No, those are all different things that all have different therapies. They are not one." But even like her speech therapy is not just one thing. There's a whole slew of issues you may be going to speech therapy for. And I think a lot of people think of like dyslexia as it is just this one thing and this is how to deal with it. And dysgraphia is a whole different thing and dyscalculia is a whole different thing. And even with dyslexia, it's not what everyone thinks it is. Because, like you said, the eye troubles do not cause the dyslexia, they just happen to coexist.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So, a fair number of the students we work with go through our program and become fluent readers and good spellers. And then they go on and do another therapy to address something else that might be going on. So we have a fair number of students who go through our program. Everything's great by the end. They're caught up to grade level in reading and spelling. And then the parents are like, "So, do you tutor in math as well?" And we're like, "Nope, sorry, we are actually highly, highly specialized. We aren't one of these tutors that do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. We focus on dyslexia and dysgraphia, the dysgraphia being the spelling version of dysgraphia. That's it. That's all we do. Highly, highly specialized. So, yeah, you need to,
Having had her in
unfortunately
therapy,
for you, you need to keep going to different therapists for different issues.
they had her at a therapy clinic where the therapists were highly specialized, and it was a huge therapy clinic. So clinic is probably not the right word. It was attached to the local hospital. Um, and there were multiple therapists who each were highly, highly specialized, and they dealt with that one thing. And then she would get out, have like a 15-minute break, and go into the next. And it really did push her forward. Having thankfully, our insurance paid for 5 days a week of each one of the therapies. Did she get much school done her first grade year? No, but working on dyslexia and learning to read, probably slightly more important.
It's great that you were able to find a center that can work on different issues and you can just kind of do it back to back. I mean, that's actually awesome. I've never heard of that.
And it was really great because they all knew where they were specialized. And like you said, they would come up and go, "This is not me." I think there were a few times a couple of the therapists were like, "I think we have an Venn diagram overlay here. I'm going to go talk to them, see how they're working on it over there. So we're not doing competing ways we're working on it."
Okay. Yep. No, that's
Which
right.
I appreciated as mom because they're like, other people are mad that I can't do it. I'm like, let's not give her 300 different ways we're trying to fix the same problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, but like you were saying, you guys specialize, and I think that specializing specifically in a specific type of dysgraphia is so important because you know how to deal with it. You're not trying to do everything. You're very good at doing one thing. Does that
Yeah.
make any sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what we do. So when a new family comes to us, I mean, well, not quite the first. I guess the first thing I do is talk to the family and learn more about the child and learn more about the background. Then the second step is where I'll do a set of screeners with the student and check their phonological skills and check their phonics skills. Sometimes also the spelling. It depends on the situation. And figure out what they know and what skills they still need to learn. So a fair number of students come to us, and the parents are like, "Well, but we already did the neuropsychological testing or the psychoeducational testing, and we've already got the diagnosis of dyslexia. Why do you need to do more screeners?" And it's really because that testing that the psychologists do is testing at a very high level, generally for a lot of different things. Whereas what we need before we start tutoring is we need to know at a much deeper, much more granular level, okay, these are the skills that the students got, and these are the ones that they still need to learn. So that when we're doing the tutoring, we don't want to just start at the beginning and teach the child everything, teach them quotes, because there's some things that they've already learned. So no need to waste everybody's time. So if we have a better sense or can figure out from these screeners what they already know, then we're not going to work on that. We're just going to focus on the skills that they haven't yet learned and teach them those. So some of the students we work with, we start at the beginning and then we go through, everything that they need to learn until they're caught up. But for a lot of our students, it's more of a situation of plugging holes, figuring out what they know, what they don't know, and then teaching them those missing skills.
I did want to ask one question, and it's going to sound terribly horrible, but it's not me asking. She's had enough teachers in her life, and even dance teachers ask it. Um, that I asked this of all of our dyslexia specialists. If someone like, say, Lita or I was just to put in more effort, would we suddenly be able to not be dyslexic anymore?
Like, try really hard today and then suddenly you're not dyslexic today anymore?
That
Yeah,
has actually been something she has been told. If you would just try to not be dyslexic, it wouldn't be a problem for you.
yeah, that's nonsense. No, I mean, you need to, if you put in a lot of effort, you can go from getting that diagnosis of dyslexia to being at a point where the next time somebody tested you, you would no longer qualify as dyslexic. So, yes, I think you can, in the broader sense, go from dyslexic to non dyslexic. Your skills could be improved to the point where you wouldn't get that diagnosis anymore. But that's going to happen over time as you learn those missing skills and as we rewire your brain to understand those phonological concepts. That's
And
not something that's going to change because you're working hard today.
and rewiring your brain with someone who knows what they're doing, not with just like, well, if you'll just put in the effort of reading 30 minutes a day, you won't be dyslexic anymore.
No, no, it's actually, whenever parents say to me, oh, well, the school is requiring my student to read 20 minutes a day after school, or they've got a reading log, they have to read 15 or 30 minutes, or the parent themselves says, you have to read X minutes every day. If your child doesn't have the underlying skills to do it, so they don't understand how the system works, they haven't learned those phonics patterns, and now you're telling them, okay, read this out loud to me, you're asking them to do something that they are literally not able to do because they don't have the skills. um, and the result of that is that you're basically making them guess, because what else are they supposed to do? If they don't have the skills, if they don't know how to sound a word out from left to right, all that's left for them to do is to guess. And that's actually not very helpful. I mean, that's one of the things that we then need to try to unlearn or have the student unlearn, because we don't want kids guessing at words. We want kids looking at the word and decoding or deciphering it from left to right, using all of those phonics and phonological skills that we're teaching them. So I'm actually not a big fan of those reading logs when students don't have the skills to be able to do it. Once they've got the skills to be able to do it, absolutely wonderful. Yes, more practice is always better. But if you don't have the skills to do it, and the result of it is that you're guessing at words, that's not terribly helpful. I think that time would be much better spent learning the phonics patterns and learning those phonological skills that you're missing.
When she was in kindergarten, she was nonverbal. She obviously wasn't reading yet. And her school was saying she needed to read 30 minutes aloud a day. And her speech therapist was like, can I write them? And was like, I'm sorry, we don't have a kid who understands the difference between green and red. And you expect her to be reading 30 minutes out loud? Let me know when she can talk, and I'll let you know when she can do 30 minutes of reading out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, we've actually had, the families that we work with, the parents have had good success going to the teachers and saying, hey, my child's now going to be doing reading tutoring after school. Can we just do that instead of the reading log? And we haven't had not a single family has come back to me and said that the teacher objected to that. So the teachers are fine with that.
And schools have gotten better in the last 10 years since she started at kind of understanding. Um, she's looking at me weird, like, no, they haven't. Would you like to come up with your opinion on this? You can talk.
America says we left the British Empire and yet we act like Europe. And yet somehow their classes are somehow getting better while ours are getting as bad as the early centuries of Europe.
It's IEP season. She's been hearing me complain about people's IEPs again.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
And
I was hearing you talk about Europe, and about Great Britain. Um, so we've got a problem in the US right now, which is that we've got huge numbers of kids who aren't reading well. And a big part of the problem is that decades ago, there was a movement away from teaching kids phonics patterns and teaching kids to sound words out from left to right and to really focus on those individual letters. And so for the past 10, 20, 30 plus years, we've tried a different approach. And that it came out of New Zealand, and the whole English speaking world moved over to this other approach. So it's not just the United States that's having this massive reading problem. It is the whole English speaking world. And we in the United States, I mean, we're turning this ship around. I mean, we've got, legislatures who've passed dyslexia legislation. We've now got requirements that kids be tested for dyslexia in kindergarten and first grade in various states. We've got requirements that teachers be trained to teach kids to do this, to read. But it's gonna take a while. This is a very large ship, and it's gonna take a long time to turn this around where we're at a point where all of the teachers have gotten this wonderful training on how to teach kids to read, including dyslexic kids, and where all kids are being tested and where all kids are getting, the support that they need in order to become good readers. I mean, we're moving in that direction. That's the good news. But it's gonna be a while before we get there.
And it is not just us, but at least the English speaking world is trying as a whole to move in this direction. My brain just had an ADHD moment. I had a question and it decided to flirt away. One of the last things, because I know you've got to go, that I wanted to ask you about this is I know a lot of parents from the neurotypical world want, and a lot of teachers sometimes want quick fixes. And there's not a lot of quick fixes out there. Your program, you would not classify it as a quick fix, correct?
It is not a quick fix, it is a quicker fix, than a lot of what I've seen. So if you go Google how long does it take to teach a dyslexic child to read, you'll probably come up with somewhere between 18 months and 3 years. I mean, that's what it looked like the last time I Googled that. We're doing it a whole lot faster than that for most kids, not for all kids. And we do it with a combination of a couple different things. I mean, first of all, our tutors are very highly trained, obviously. We're very much focused on those phonological skills because without the phonological skills, it's very hard to learn those phonics patterns. So that is the second point. And then the third point is that we do what's called high intensity tutoring, meaning if a parent comes to me and says, yes, my child is, in fourth grade and is reading at a kindergarten level, I want to do tutoring twice a week. I will most likely say to them, there's no point. I mean, if you're going to do this twice a week, it's going to take you years to get caught up. So most of the students we work with are doing the tutoring 3 or even 4 times a week. In the summer, it's often 5 times a week with the goal of getting caught up as quickly as possible. Because if you're, especially when you're in the younger grades, if your classmates are continuing to learn at the, typical pace, but you're starting out behind, you have to be learning, you have to be catching up, you have to be learning at a much faster pace than they are in order to actually be able to catch up with them. It's not good enough if you're only learning as quickly as they are. You have to learn more quickly than they do in order to catch up. And twice a week, you're not going to get there. But that's also the reason summer tutoring is so, so, so good. Because in the summer, the kids who aren't doing tutoring are going to stay, at the same level or maybe even dip. And then the kids who are doing tutoring have a chance to catch up. So that's why summer tutoring is such a wonderful thing.
Most of the parents I know in the neurotypical world, they're like, hi, can I get a quick fix? And they don't want to do those 5 days a week of therapy. And I'm like, but those 5 days,
31
they're,
minutes.
thank you. But yeah, quick fix was not just the time frame, but yeah, you can come in once a week and we'll get it done in 30 days. And it's like,
No, that's not, I've never seen a case like that. I mean,
yeah,
we definitely
it
have some kids who get caught up more quickly and some kids who need more time, but there's never been a 30-day record. I get to see that one.
I I've had parents come up and go, "How can I get, like, my nonverbal kid talking and doing stuff like Lita as quickly as she did?" And I'm like, "It took us 5 years of 5 days a week intensive therapy. Good luck."
That's not quick.
No, and even months, they're wanting that right here, right now. I think a lot of these and I've had teachers ask me the same thing. They're like, what quick fix do you know that's out there?" And I'm like, "How many hours do you wanna work with a child a week?" And I think
Sounds like
that
you've made great progress, Lita.
yeah, you have made great progress. She's tired. We're moving houses, and she's like, "I am so tired." Um, But yeah, I mean, that was what I meant by quick fix and even like the hard work. Cause everyone's like, well, if you just work hard. And I'm like, but you have to get those skills. It's not just work hard. You've got to get those skills implemented.
Yep, I agree 100%.
I know we said we wouldn't keep you long because you've got to get somewhere. Where can people find out more about the program and find you on the internet?
Sure. We are Kids Up Reading Tutors. So you can find us on the internet at kidsupreadingtutors.com. And there's a whole bunch of information on our website. We're actually in the process of upgrading it a little bit right now. So there's a lot of information there. And then if you want more, there's a contact us button and there's a schedule a call button where you can reach out to us either by email or set up a call. And we'll talk about your child and see what we can do to help get them reading and spelling well.
We'll put all that information in the description below and we'll make sure it's on our website. Daniela, thank you so much for coming on the program today and giving us a little bit more insight into dyslexia.
Absolutely great to be here and good luck with your move.
Hey, thank you so much. And you get to your very important meeting.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Hello, thank you for watching the podcast and please subscribe and also look at that adorable paper. So if you want to subscribe for it and also please leave a like. And don't forget if you subscribe to our stuff you won't miss any of our new podcast stuffies. And also did you see that adorable paper? Don't you like it?